name is Claudia Labisch and I am the head of the Europe office of the Leibniz Association. The Leibniz Association is one of the 4 biggest German research organizations with 96 research institutes that are spread all over Germany, and we are covering basically all fields of science. I arrived actually in '96 in Brussels. I have been working first for one of the German Länder, the land of Bremen, where I have spent 3 years working. Then I moved on to COVI, which you know, and I have been working for COVI for 7 years. Basically, I was advising researchers on how to get EU funding for their research projects, and we developed also workshops on the special aspects of applications for projects and also the management of projects in terms of financial aspects and legal affairs. Well, maybe the first one was before coming to Brussels in my former working life. That was back in southern France, more or less, more than 20 years ago, when I started working for a startup that was a producer and a supplier of intraocular lenses, and it was just a very dynamic environment, and seeing this little startup growing in such a short lapse of time was really something very, very interesting, and yeah, it was very motivating as well. The second one was, of course, arriving in Brussels and starting to work in a truly European environment. And the third one, logic, starting to work for the Leibniz Association and representing its interests in the Brussels environment. As you might be aware, in Germany we have something that is called the Pact for Research and Innovation. And you can really compare it to the ERA priorities. It's like the German roadmap for research organizations. And that means that the Leibniz Association is very much committed to the objectives to this pact, which has more or less the same objectives as the ERA objectives. And saying this, that means that our competitive funding depends or is, let's say, is very much related to the achievement, or at least to the good progress towards achieving these objectives. So to give you one example, for instance, in the field of open access, transfer of knowledge and open access is one of the priorities of ERA, and it is also, let's say, a strategic objective of the Pact for Research and Innovation. And in the field of open access, the Leibniz Association has been active for many, many years. We have developed a lot of schemes, like we have developed Leibniz repositories for research data across different and across all research disciplines. We have something that is called research Leibniz data. That is a network for research data, and it provides services for data management and for research infrastructures. So saying this, as we have been committed to open access for so many years, by the way, starting with the Berlin Declaration back in 2004, which we have signed at that time, we are, I would say, naturally also very committed to the European Open Science Cloud. We have supported the EOSC Declaration, and we have some of our scientists and experts that have been very, very active in the initial phase of the European Science Cloud developments. I think one of the main problems with the ERA is that R&I investments are not equally spread in the member states. So not all the member states are equally investing in R&I. It is a problem in particular in times of crisis, because that is the first thing that member states are cutting when there is a crisis. And then of course I think member states they are starting to look where can they save money and where it is the most needed. And very often research and innovation, especially research, is something that is being done over a longer period. So it's a long-term investment that doesn't necessarily pay back in a very short term. So I think it's very attractive for politicians to cut there in the first place. But I think it is an error too, because then you have a different situation in Europe. You have member states investing a lot and those who are not investing very much. And then of course researchers from member states who are not investing in research and innovation anymore, they turn to the European programs. And we could see this very well after the 2008 crisis, where out of a sudden scientists started there was a rush towards the EU programs. And that of course leads to very high rate of oversubscription. And then some scientists just think like, well, we don't go for it anymore because it's not attractive. The success rates are so low. And that is on the one hand, but the situation on the other hand is, while you would think that not investing maybe in a country but going for EU funds could kind of balance the situation, well, that is not the case. Because over time, and let's say over the last 12 years, we can see that those member states who have not invested so much in R&I as other member states, they started at some point to lag behind. So that explains a little bit this innovation gap that we are still facing here. And the problem is that even a new era will not be able to tackle this problem. This is really something that to some extent only member states themselves will be able to deal with and to solve. Well, the G6 for me, that is first of all, on my level, it is working together with other German but mostly European research organizations, having networking, having a friendly exchange, having a professional exchange. It is enriching my work because I do not consider my job from a purely German perspective, but I have always to take into consideration the requirements of my Spanish colleagues, of my Italian colleagues, of my French colleagues, and that is all what Europe is about, isn't it? So, and then of course the G6 is representing 6 of the major research organizations in Europe. So I think we have a certain weight with our opinion, with our voice here in Brussels, and having a voice is very important. It is important to have a voice of research performing organizations, because you have the funders and you have industry, and you have a lot of industry. But the group of research performing organizations, or let's say the voice, has not been heard so much in Brussels. And maybe it is because scientists, they are not farmers and they don't come to Brussels with their tracts. They stay at home or elsewhere doing research, and maybe that is the secret why they're not here in Brussels. So they need a voice, and G6 tries to give them that voice.